So Expedition 33, a game that needs no introduction as it absolutely swept the Game Awards this year and instantly became beloved by tons of people as it was just a great game, has recently had their Indie Game of the Year title revoked because the studio behind the game, Sandfall Interactive, used generative AI during development. Now this decision comes from specifically the Indie Game Awards, which is different from the regular Game Awards as they obviously go over specifically indie games. With the regular Game Awards, however, Expedition 33 is still this year's Game of the Year, but that may change, especially with all the backlash that the game is now getting, which I'll talk about later on in this video. But when the Indie Game Awards decided to revoke Expedition 33's title, they put out a statement which, according to an article from Insider Gaming, reads, "The Indie Game Awards have a hard stance on the use of Gen AI throughout the nomination process and during the ceremony itself," the statement reads. When it was submitted for consideration, representatives of Sandfall Interactive agreed that no Gen AI was used in the development of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. In light of Sandfall Interactive confirming the use of Gen AI on the day of the Indie Game Awards 2025 premiere, this does disqualify Clair Obscur Expedition 33 from its nomination. So it's not just the fact that they used generative AI, it's also the fact that they lied about it. But before I talk about that, there's an article that I want to talk about first, which comes from El País and is an interview with the producer Francois Marousset. I definitely butchered that pronunciation, as the article does give some context as to what generative AI was used and what they used it for, etc. "We used some AI but not much," Francois Marousset, producer of Clair Obscur, tells El País via video conference. "The key is that we were very clear about what we wanted to do and what to invest in, and of course technology has allowed us to do things that were unthinkable a short time ago," explains Marousset. Unreal Engine 5's tools and assets have been very important in improving the graphics, gameplay, and cinematics. When he mentions assets, he's referring to pre-built 3D elements like a house, a tree, or a path that can be used to build scenes, significantly reducing production costs. Now, since this article was published, they did make a clarification at the request of Sandfall Interactive, which says, "The studio states that it was in contact with El País on April 25th, 3 months prior to this publication. During these exchanges, Sandfall Interactive indicated that it had used a limited number of pre-existing assets, notably 3D assets sourced from the Unreal Engine marketplace. None of these assets were created using artificial intelligence." Sandfall Interactive further clarifies that there are no generative AI created assets in the game. When the first AI tools became available in 2022, some members of the team briefly experimented with them to generate temporary placeholder textures. Upon release, instances of a placeholder texture were removed within 5 days to be replaced with the correct textures that had always been intended for release but were missed during the quality assurance process. Now, while the placeholder textures did get removed, there were some people that still noticed them, like Twitter user Neonomancer, who said, "Correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears as though Clair Obscur Expedition 33 used generative AI for these textures. And you can clearly see in the photo that these were made by a computer. There is no way these were made by a person." But like I said earlier, the textures got removed, and Neonomancer posted a further tweet that said, "Excellent, the AI generated textures in Clair Obscur were indeed placeholders and were replaced with custom assets. The other AI generated poster that was present in the starting area, don't have a screenshot of it now, was also removed." And you can see in the photo all the art of the newspapers and the stuff that the developers actually meant to put in the game. Now, while Sandfall did quickly fix their mistake, they still used generative AI and put that shit in the game, even though they didn't mean to and it was clearly a mistake, which is why I'm not being super harsh about it. It still doesn't change the fact that generative AI was used in the development process, albeit in a very, very small amount, and as kind of like a reference as to like what they want to put somewhere or what they want it to look like, so that way they can later go back and change it. Except they did it or caught their mistake and changed it after the game launched. And what makes it even worse is that they lied about it. Like, they told the Indie Game Awards, yeah, there's no generative AI in this game, and then they later went on to say, oh yeah, there is some AI in it. And yeah, sure, while like 99% of the game was made by people in the development team, there's still that 1% or probably even less that was generative AI, and that's what really irritates me. And the thing that kind of sucks about this whole situation is I fucking love Expedition 33. I think it's an amazing game, and it was my favorite one that came out this year, and I even voted for it to be Game of the Year in the Game Awards. So when I found out that they used generative AI during development, at first I was like, god damn it, but then I looked into it a bit more and I was like, alright, it's not that bad, but it's still pretty bad. And the reason why I still think Expedition 33 is a great game is because the usage of the generative AI was so small and minuscule that I'm willing to be more lenient with it. granted, I'm still not forgiving this shit because generative AI has absolutely no place in gaming, and Samfall Interactive could have literally done anything else other than resorting to using it, but it's the fact that the usage of it was so minor and the vast majority of the rest of the game was made by the development team, so I'm gonna be less harsh about it. Granted, if the majority of the game was made by a computer, then yeah, I would absolutely be hating on it, but I'm not gonna call it AI slop garbage just because like 0.1% of the game was made by generative AI. And that's another thing too. Ever since this whole situation was brought to light, it has caused quite a stir in the gaming community, with people defending it and a lot of people hating on it. With the people defending it saying like, oh, it was just a small placeholder that they later fixed, it's not that big of a deal. And the people hating on it being like, no, this game is AI slop, it's fucking garbage, get it out of here, Samfall Interactive should be ashamed of themselves. I knew I wasn't crazy for hating on it. And listen, do I think some of the hate is warranted? Yeah, because a lot of people, myself included, are heavily against generative AI, so finding out that they used it and not only lied about it to the Indie Game Awards are pretty valid reasons. And initially when I found out about this whole situation and I researched it, I defended Expedition 33. I was like, yeah, sure, as much as I hate generative AI, it's really not that big of a deal because it was just a placeholder texture that eventually got removed. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, because generative AI is an abomination to art and creativity. It should not have even come within 10 miles of the development of this game. And again, Samfall Interactive could have used literally anything else. They are clearly a very talented team of developers. Surely they could have found something, anything to use other than resorting to something that was made by a computer. But this whole thing, as well as Larian Studios, the studio behind Baldur's Gate 3, coming out and saying that they're using AI to help with the development of their new game Divinity, has really sparked a conversation about the usage of AI in gaming going forward, and this topic is a whole other conversation for another video. But this also comes at the shock of CD Projekt Red saying that they are also using AI for the development of The Witcher 4, but like Larian Studios, they're not using it to replace any of their workers, they're just kind of using it as a tool to help them out. So the usage of AI in video games is definitely going to be a lot more prevalent going forward, as these studios are just openly admitting that they're using it, and there are most likely plenty of other studios that use it, but they're just very secretive about it. Now again, I'm not going to dive too deep into this topic, but I'll just quickly give my 2 cents on it. As I said earlier, generative AI has no place in gaming, and honestly, it can go down to hell and never come back. But when it comes to AI in general, again, excluding the generative aspect of it, as long as these companies are using it as a tool to assist them and they're not firing or replacing anybody because of it, honestly, I'm kind of fine with it, because like I've said in the past, AI should be used as a tool to help us, not replace us. And I think the conversation around it is very nuanced, because it seems like a lot of people, they just hear that AI is being used and they're just like, oh, these studios are creating a bunch of shitty slop garbage. When in reality, these studios are just using it to help them out. And again, as long as that's what it's being used for and they're not using it for any of the artwork or creative aspects, I'm kind of fine with it. But obviously I draw a very fine line the second generative AI starts getting used, because it is just such an insult to actual art and artists. And that's going to do it for the video. Thank you for watching, and yeah, peace.